Right, yeah, there you have it. You're now on the Climate Chat segment of the weekend show, and it's another exciting Saturday to have a conversation about what's happening to our climate. It's good to be back on your screens. My name is Zainab Sani. Today on Climate Chat, we're talking about something that's currently affecting everybody. I come here every other day to talk about the climate, the weather pattern, the changing environment and whatnot. But today, we've seen the rains falling over the past couple of days. We've seen how heavy it has been and how constant it has been, right? While you are in your home or maybe, trying to just manage the weather, there are people whose lives have been affected deeply by the rain, and also, communities have lost a lot of things as a result of the flooding that came with the rains. And today on the show, we are talking about this issue of flooding in Nigeria, what the government is doing. It would interest you to know that about 133 local government areas have been affected. And according to the Director General of the National Emergency Management Agency, NEMA, she says that about 500,000 people have been affected as a result of flooding this year alone, and 175 lives have been lost. So it's a serious issue that we have to discuss. And joining me to have this conversation this morning is Sharon Chia Herman. She's back here on the Climate Chat, and she's a climate leader and also the team lead for Green with Green, right? So good morning, Sharon, and thank you for coming on Climate Chat.
Good morning. Thank you so much for having me again. Excited for this one.
Yeah, so I would just like to start from, you are in the field. I come here and have the conversation every Saturday, but it's people like you that go out in the field for advocacy, to meet with some of the survivors and have these conversations with them. And I really would like to know, what has it been like for areas that have been flooded this year as a result of the rain?
Okay, I think this year, one of the most challenging things has been the reach of the flooding. So there are some states like Lagos, Bayelsa, that, it's like an annual thing. This year, Lagos floods every year. But this year, the challenge has been states even in the far north that normally don't even experience rainfall, that are having drought. We're now seeing cases of heavy rainfall leading to even flooding. And I think what makes that difficult is areas such as Lagos and other areas that you can almost predict that the flooding is going to happen. They kind of have a measure of, preparedness, right, to prepare themselves for the flooding. But areas that have not experienced this before, it's almost like we're now running helter-skelter, trying to get help and the necessary measures over there, because it's never happened before, it was not prepared for. So this year, aside from that, the areas that have never had flooding before is the severity of the flooding. Usually, by this time, the flooding should be, receding, but it's almost like it's just beginning to start. So it's really, really overwhelming this year, because people believe that by this, or we've seen that by August, September, there's already, the rain is leaving. But this time around, it's like this August, the rain is just beginning to start. So even the resources that have been put out for areas that are affected by flooding, it's almost like it's no longer enough, because the time, keeps getting, exceeded for the normal raining season. So those are the two difficulties: area that I've never experienced, and then the intensity of the flooding as well.
This thing you say brings me to the next question I have, but it also raises points about how climate change fits in all of this. Because some people would even tell you that climate change is a myth, right? But if we are saying that areas that have never experienced flooding are now experiencing flooding, that's a signal, that's a warning sign, sort of. But beyond that, I would like to believe that the federal government should have done risk analysis before now. The federal government should have put measures in place before now, and been able to foretell some of this, and because we can predict how the weather would, act over a period of time. But it was only last month, in the month of July, that they activated the Emergency Operations Center, and things like that. So what would you say about the federal government's response in all of this?
All right. So first, when we say government, I feel like a lot of people, their mind goes to the federal government. But, we have the three levels of government: the federal, the state, and the local government. And I feel that we leave a lot of responsibilities to the federal. Or federal government should do this, or what is the president doing, what are the ministers doing? But we forget that we have the local government chairmen, we have, the local level, the state level, that have their own responsibility before it even gets to, the federal level. level. So I saw the chief of staff to the president also mentioned in his meeting with NEMA that, of course, they have their role to play, but people should also hold their state governments and local governments accountable, which I think is very important. And number two, this fight, like you said, we're able to predict. I mean, it's telling somebody that you don't know that Lagos is going to get flooded is you being delusional, because it happens every single year. But I think it's a joint effort. So, for instance, we have people that are building estates on waterways that they know that will get flooded every single year. And when the government tries to, oh, don't build here or give restrictions, it's like the government is after you, or they don't want you to make money, all of those stuff. Even here in Abuja, I don't know if I'm supposed to mention the name, but there's a popular estate in Lugbe. Yes, but there's a popular estate in Lugbe that gets flooded every single year, and lives are lost. Like, it's not that people just get flooded, people die every single year. I think it was last year, the government tried to evacuate them, and they made it into a big issue. Oh, the government is trying to, and I'm like, but your life is at stake. Let's even say there's like political listening, but is your life not more important than? So sometimes we put the blame on the government for things that we can do for ourselves. You are building on coastal waterways. You are building without a plan, for there's a particular height you're supposed to build if you're building along the coastal waterway. So there are things that even we as individuals can do. And for the government, yes, it's so sad that it took them till July, right? You don't wait, like someone said, you don't prepare for the battle on the battlefield. Like, I mean, last year we should have started planning for this year's rainy season, not July this year, when lives have already been lost, like 175, like you mentioned. And for me, I feel that this issue is overbeaten. I mean, like, I understand for states that never experienced flooding, the government is trying to run around and make things work. But for a state like Lagos, Bayelsa, states that get flooded every year, why are we still having the same number of casualties every year? Like, it's not as if it happened to us. The flooding
was not unexpected.
It was not unexpected. So I don't understand why every single year we keep on going through the same circles of people, dying and all of that. There should be measures put in place long before, like long-term plans, 5-year plans, 3-year plans, to make sure that every single year when the rainy season comes, this is what is going to happen. But we, the citizens, also have to play our part and also, partner with the government. When they say don't build here, don't, move from here, we also have to move. And another thing I find funny is that usually our first and only line of defense when flooding or even any climate disaster happens is to just move the entire community, to uproot people and, move them to new communities, which I don't think is a very sustainable plan. You can't keep on uprooting people. First of all, it's not even cost effective. Number two, there are a lot of people that, especially the elderly ones, they don't want to live where they are and all of that. There's just a lot involved. And I think that evacuating people every single year should not be the only plan. How are we teaching people climate adaptation? How are we teaching them resilience? How are we teaching people how to prepare? Because if you keep on uprooting, where you are moving them to, you're actually moving them to IDP camps. The quality of life there is so poor. You're moving them to IDP camps, and there's a pressure on the resources available in that area. Imagine moving everybody from, for instance, Benue to maybe Nasarawa or Abuja. There's already like dedicated resources for people there. You're adding on another group of people to a particular. So I feel that for the federal government, state government, local government, they should move from just every time there's flooding or any climate disaster, evacuation that's not the only thing you can do to either mitigate or adapt to some of these climate disasters. Yes.
A lot is packed into all of the things you have said, and I mean, if we begin to unpack it, you may not live here today.
Yes.
From the responsibility of the local government and the state government to the responsibility of individuals, and also the fact that governments need to begin to take a multi-year approach as against, annual response, fire. Yes, last minute response, a fire brigade approach just to address the climate disaster.
Yes.
But really, some of these things are sort of preventive measures. Like if you say don't build on waterways, people have already done that. Don't clog the drainage. People have already clogged the drainages. And, the flood is here.
Yes.
In the interim, some communities are already being flooded. Some communities have totally lost everything, right, as a result of the flood. So what can we do right now? And when I say what can we do, I'm referring to people in these communities, because in some areas, help would not even get to them. We are talking about help from the federal government. It doesn't go around. Let's be realistic. And even when it does go around, it's usually the bare minimum effort of, we'll get you a place to stay, where to manage until the rain subside. So in the interim, what can communities do for themselves? We're talking about climate adaptation and, literacy and, mitigation and things. So what can communities begin to do right now as the flood is happening, and also, just thinking forward ahead to the future?
Okay, so first of all, I like that you said, what can communities do for themselves? Share communities that it has already happened. Like, this is not even a matter of preventing or mitigating. This is now how to adapt and be resilient. So the first thing is, like I mentioned earlier, people need to understand who to hold accountable for, doing some of these things, like building the bridges, putting in some climate resilient infrastructure. They need to know who to hold accountable, and go through the right channels. Like for instance, people don't even know that NEMA is an agency. Like they don't know that. And to be honest, if there's anything that is relating to emergency, climate disasters and the rest, NEMA should be the first, or at least one of the first lines of defense you go to, not trying to find a way to get to the presidency or to the Senate. And then number two, I feel that people who are a bit enlightened about climate resilience and adaptation, like myself, should take some of these solutions down to those people who that their communities get affected, not when the flooding has already happened, not when the drought has already happened, right? Try to show these people some of the ways that they can stay resilient when the flooding happens, because it's almost like there's nothing you can do to happen. And the third one is also trying to act like there's nobody coming to save them. Like sometimes I feel like people just wait. When you ask them, oh, the government did not help us, they didn't give us this thing. But when the rain started falling little by little, you were seeing, yes, the signs come. If there's a way to like move, or when you're building a new home, don't build it too close to the water yourself. Like that's something you can do yourself instead of waiting for the government all the time. So I feel like there are a lot of we can look at other countries or other communities who have actually thrived. There are some communities, even first world countries, who flooding is one of their biggest natural disasters. How are they able to cope? How are they able to bounce back, and see how we can adapt those models to our local communities? Yes,
absolutely. It's been a delightful conversation with you, Sharon, and you can be sure that we'll have you back, because it's you are the experts here, and we need to keep having this conversation to ensure that people will know, right? Yes. And the government listens at some point and begin to take actions on some of the things that we discussed. So yeah, that's how much we can take for today's episode of Climate Chat. But thank you so much for being our guest. Yeah, Sharon Chia-Heman is the team lead at Green with Green, and she is the climate advocate and leader. So that's how much we can take on today's episode of Climate Chat. I'll be back next week with yet another exciting segment of the show. Don't go anywhere. More still coming your way on The Weekend Show. My name is Zainab Adetola.